Welcome to Dialogue. This is part of a series on dirty politics. The last episode was a warm-up stretch to the real event. In this episode, you will better understand why society is under an unbreakable spell.
We really need to set the stage for what this deep dive is about because we're moving entirely past the noise.
Right. Leaving the day-to-day stuff behind.
Exactly. We're leaving behind the low-hanging fruit past the daily scandals, the common political spin, all the predictable arguments that fill the cable news cycle.
Okay.
This discussion is about the highly sophisticated, often covert machinery of power. We are looking at the tactics deployed when simple persuasion fails.
And when the real objective shifts.
It shifts entirely to control. It is the playbook used when the goal is not to win your vote, but to, well, manage your mind. We are talking about the highest level strategies, often adapted from military doctrines and aimed squarely at the domestic population.
And the core message we need to grasp here is what, exactly?
It's this. The single most dangerous weapon in modern politics isn't tanks or, outright authoritarian force. It is perception control.
Perception control.
Because when the average person is trained to distrust their own judgment, when they no longer feel intellectually or emotionally capable of determining truth from fiction, power operates completely without the necessary friction of informed consent.
They stop pushing back.
They stop pushing back because they assume they are the problem.
That is a fundamental challenge to civic independence. So let's dive right in. Where does the traditional political theater end and the backroom manipulation truly begin? Most of us are familiar with the cute stuff we covered last time, the political equivalent of parlor tricks. We talked about having paid audience members, the clappers, to fake enthusiasm at rallies. We recognize the manufactured local protests, that practice known as astroturfing.
Where corporate money pretends to be a grassroots movement.
And we certainly swim daily in the profitable cycles of manufactured outrage.
And we need to recognize that those actions, while manipulative, are still tactics of persuasion. They're trying to convince you to support something.
Okay, that's a key distinction.
This discussion is about what happens when that effort stops, when persuasion is abandoned and the systematic application of pressure and control begins.
And this isn't just theory.
What's crucial is that we are not talking about hypotheticals or scenes from spy movies. We are discussing advanced strategies happening in plain sight.
Executed by whom?
Often by ordinary, highly compensated people who are simply following the economic and professional incentives they've been given within these vast institutional structures.
So we're dealing with the repurposing of tools originally designed for warfare.
And now aimed at civilian populations.
That sounds like a profound escalation. What's the fundamental strategy shift when a system moves from just trying to get you to agree to actually trying to control how you think and feel?
This is where we arrive at psychological operations or psyops.
Which originally were for foreign enemies.
Historically, yes. These operations were strictly designed for external, hostile foreign theaters, purely for warfare. The core purpose was, and still is, to influence the emotions, motives, reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, and individuals.
All to achieve military objectives without actually fighting.
Correct. But somewhere, likely in a think tank presentation, someone made a critical and frankly highly cynical observation about this military toolkit.
What was that?
They realized that if you could successfully analyze and predict the complex behavior of a trained military adversary, a group actively trying to thwart you, you could certainly analyze and predict the behavior of a civilian population.
Because civilians are easier targets.
The cold, calculated realization was civilians are often far more predictable because they are uniquely susceptible to constant social pressures, immediate economic concerns, and predictable emotional reactions to fear.
Wow. So that's the scary transition point, realizing the methods for demoralizing an enemy are perfectly scalable to managing your own population. Now, if we take that PSYOPs framework and aim it internally, what are they actually trying to achieve? Is the goal just a high volume of lies?
That is the common misunderstanding. What's fascinating here is that the goal is not primarily about distributing outright, easily verifiable lies. That is too sloppy, too easy to dismantle.
So what is it then?
Instead, PSYOPs are about framing reality so thoroughly, so completely, that the objective truth, even if it is freely available, it simply ceases to hold any relevant emotional or intellectual weight.
So if they control the frame, they dictate the picture you see inside it.
And the reality outside that frame becomes irrelevant.
Okay, so if controlling the frame is the key, what are the core principles? How does this framing work in the modern digital world? What is the foundation of this unbreakable spell we mentioned at the start?
We can distill this down to 4 critical principles that, when used effectively, consistently override rational thought. The first is this: repetition beats accuracy.
Just sheer volume.
We are talking about the unavoidable, constant exposure to a specific narrative delivered across seemingly unrelated platforms. Psychologically, repeated exposure lowers the energy required for processing. If you hear a political slogan or a social threat narrative 10 times,
The 11th time you just accept it?
your brain doesn't question it. It accepts it as baseline context, regardless of evidence.
That makes perfect sense. Our brains are designed for cognitive efficiency. If something is repeated, the default is to treat it as a known fact and move on.
Exactly. It's a cognitive shortcut. The second principle is emotion beats logic.
This one feels very familiar.
Decisions, especially political ones, are consistently driven by gut feeling, emotional arousal, or engineered outrage, rather than a sober review of data.
If they can make you afraid enough,
You stop accessing your prefrontal cortex. You enter a reactive limbic state, where facts are irrelevant compared to the need to do something to relieve that emotional pressure.
I see that play out constantly in social media comments. No one takes 5 minutes to verify a screenshot. They just hit share if it confirms their immediate feeling of fury or fear.
The emotional high of sharing the outrage is its own reward. The truth is collateral damage. And that leads directly to the third principle, which is arguably the most powerful divisive force today. Identity beats evidence.
Meaning, loyalty to my group is more important than facts that challenge my group.
Exactly. If your career, your social standing, your sense of purpose are all tied up in a specific ideological camp, and external evidence contradicts the group's narrative,
The evidence must be wrong.
the brain calculates that losing the evidence is a smaller cost than losing the tribe.
That explains why facts rarely change anyone's mind anymore. It's not an intelligence problem, it's a belonging problem. We are social creatures first.
And finally, the fourth pillar. Fear beats hope.
Anxiety is a better motivator.
A far more reliable and efficient motivator for mass compliance than optimism. Hope requires belief in the future, personal agency. Fear, however, requires immediate, centralized protection.
Usually offered by the very systems generating the fear.
Precisely. A population constantly bracing for the next disaster is a compliant population.
So if those in power successfully control those 4 levers, repetition, emotion, identity, and fear, what does that mean for control? Do they still need heavy-handed censorship, like banning books?
This is where the strategy becomes terrifyingly efficient. If you successfully control what people fear, who they blame for it, and what narratives they are socially incentivized to repeat, we don't need external censorship at all.
The public censors itself.
They become the primary gatekeepers of the narrative.
And how does that self-censorship work on a mass scale? Is it conscious?
It's often unconscious. It's based on 2 major forces: the fear of social consequence and simple cognitive exhaustion.
Let's talk about consequence.
Okay, if I observe my neighbor, my coworker, or some public figure get ridiculed, isolated, or financially destroyed for expressing a dissenting view, what we call social death,
I learned very quickly not to do that.
you automatically, instantly, and unconsciously adjust your own public speech. I don't need a government regulator telling me to be quiet. The fear of being isolated and professionally ruined does the job perfectly.
It's an invisible tyranny powered by peer pressure. It removed the need for visible state coercion, which always sparks resistance. That really reminds me of that ironic military doctrine parallel you mentioned. The goal in warfare is to demoralize the enemy.
And the political adaptation, once the tools are turned inward, simply, let's do that exact same thing but to the voters. The objective is to make independent thought feel emotionally and socially taxing.
So once that foundation of control is laid via psyops, the next step isn't trying to convert the resistors, it's just overwhelming them.
That's it.
Let's shift our focus to that tactical implementation, which has been termed cognitive warfare. If the goal is no longer belief, the new win condition must be confuse them, don't convince them.
Absolutely. The ultimate goal here is cognitive exhaustion. A human being who is constantly swimming in conflicting narratives, spending all their mental energy trying to discern truth from noise, is not a free, functioning critical thinker.
They're just a frustrated recipient.
A compliant, frustrated recipient of whatever simplified information provides relief.
And how do they achieve this level of saturation?
They systematically flood the zone. This involves a calculated list of tactics designed to push our processing capacity beyond its breaking point.
Like what?
First, you have constant breaking news. often about minor, non-actionable, or purely speculative events. This keeps your attention hyper-focused on the immediate present.
The crisis of the last 10 minutes.
Right. Which prevents any meaningful long-term analysis. It can't connect the dots if you're always chasing the next bright light.
And the news cycle is engineered to never end. There is always an endless feed of something urgent.
Then you layer on endless scandals and manufactured outrage cycles. These don't even need to be factually significant. They just need to generate a massive, emotional 48-hour explosion that consumes all public oxygen.
Which distracts from the slow, boring stuff that actually matters.
Exactly. The systemic, legislative, or economic issues that require weeks of reading go completely unnoticed.
And the most debilitating element, the thing that truly causes the burnout, is the orchestration of contradictory narratives presented simultaneously.
This is the intended consequence. You can read 3 major outlets about the same event, say an economic report, and you receive 3 completely different versions, all delivered with unshakable certainty.
So what does this perpetual state of confusion and overload do to a person's decision-making process?
What does it do to you?
Well, I know for me, sometimes the only rational response is to turn off the internet, close all the tabs, and just stop caring for a minute. The effort feels pointless.
That feeling, that mental surrender, is the desired outcome. A confused and exhausted population stops researching. They default immediately to relying on identity.
The thought process becomes, I don't know what's true, but my tribe must have the answer.
They fall back to tribal loyalty because certainty, even if it's based on emotion, feels infinitely better than the anxiety of unknowing.
And the final step is accepting authority just for relief. The internal dialogue changes from, I must investigate, to, I'm too tired, just tell me what to do and make the noise stop.
That is the core, deeply cynical insight of cognitive warfare. People surrender their freedom not primarily when they are scared. Fear can activate resistance.
They surrender when they are simply too tired.
Too tired to maintain mental vigilance. If you're too busy navigating the daily information barrage, you don't have the bandwidth to question the underlying system. And if you don't question the system
wins by default.
it wins.
That's a profound point about exhaustion being the true path to compliance. Now, we've talked about mass saturation, but modern systems have moved past that. In the age of data, blasting one message out to everyone is a waste of resources. They don't do that anymore, do they?
Unless they have to. We are now firmly in the era of micromanipulation, which is essentially targeted radicalization.
Using our data against us.
Modern dirty politics leverages incredibly sophisticated psychographic targeting. This is where behavioral science meets big data. They know your emotional vulnerabilities, your core anxieties, often better than you know them yourself.
Based on what?
The totality of your digital footprint. Every click, every dwell time on a post, every share, every search query you've ever run.
So if a major event happens, they don't just issue one press release. They create a personalized narrative for millions of people, tailored to their user profile.
That's the essence of the operation. Same event, entirely different narrative. They slice the electorate into highly defined psychographic segments based on personality models.
So they target groups based on their primary emotional driver.
That's right.
Give us some concrete examples of how those narratives are personalized.
Okay, let's look at 4 primary profiles. If your profile places you among the anxious, you're driven by uncertainty and security concerns, you receive content specifically designed to amplify fear and chaos.
The subtext is always, act now in the way we dictate, or you and your family will be unsafe.
They prey on that visceral need for stability.
What about people whose primary emotional engine is anger, the ones looking for someone to blame?
The angry receive narratives focusing entirely on blame and scapegoating. The messaging directs that frustration toward a specific, easily identifiable external group.
It validates their anger and promises retribution.
It says, it's their fault, they are hurting you, and if you join us, you will have the power to punish them.
And what about the widespread feeling of social displacement, the lonely?
The lonely and the socially dislocated receive messages promising immediate, powerful belonging and identity. They are given a defined role in a grand existential conflict. They feel seen. They feel useful.
And finally, those who are genuinely driven by moral or ethical concerns.
The morally sensitive receive carefully crafted, hyper-specific outrage. The event is framed not as a complex political disagreement, but as an absolute moral failing.
So the opposition isn't just wrong on policy, they are fundamentally evil.
And that justifies total warfare against them.
The result is truly insidious because it feels so authentic to the person receiving it. Everyone believes the message speaks directly to me, that they independently found content that perfectly validates their unique worldview.
While in reality, every piece of content, every headline, was precisely designed by algorithms and behavioral scientists to manipulate their specific, pre-identified emotional vulnerability.
It's personalized control disguised as authentic discovery.
Yes.
Which brings us to that dark truth of the new content economy. You think you found content.
The content found you, and it knew exactly which button to push and when.
So let's pivot to the defensive strategies. What happens when this carefully constructed, micro-targeted narrative is actually threatened? If a whistleblower or a journalist stands up and says, wait, that's not what happened, and I have the data to prove it, what's the response?
The response is immediate, brutal, and highly efficient. The system skips debate entirely and moves straight to discrediting the person, not the facts.
The doctrine is chillingly pragmatic.
You don't need to destroy the facts, you just need to destroy the people who carry them. The goal is to make the messenger so radioactive, so toxic, that anything they say is automatically dismissed.
So what's in the sophisticated destruction toolkit they use to neutralize these opponents? Let's get specific.
It's a multi-pronged assault. One primary tool is the selective leak of private information. They don't need a smoking gun, just an embarrassing text message, a context-free email snippet, anything to poison the well.
And shift the conversation from what they said to who they are.
That works perfectly with context stripping. They find a statement, maybe a bad joke from a decade ago, remove it from its original meaning, and present it as definitive proof of malicious intent.
The 3-second clip negates the 30-minute speech.
Absolutely. Then there's guilt by association. If the opponent ever met or spoke with anyone deemed unacceptable, even if it was years ago and totally unrelated, that connection is amplified constantly.
And perhaps the most difficult to fight is the massive deployment of moral framing. Disagreement over complex policy is immediately turned into a catastrophic moral failing. You're not just wrong about the budget, you're defined as a greedy, uncaring person.
This escalation is critical because moral language bypasses logic and activates that tribal certainty we talked about. If you disagree, you are not merely mistaken. You are evil and must be purged.
And in the digital age, there's the passive but devastating weapon of algorithmic suppression.
Right. Visibility is surgically reduced. Shadow banning, deranking in search results, demonetization. They just vanish from the feed and are deemed irrelevant.
So once that arsenal has been deployed, the conversation stopper comes into effect. What are the labels that instantly end the dialogue?
The labels are incredibly potent. Once someone is successfully branded with a highly charged, non-negotiable label, a racist, an extremist, unhinged, or simply dangerous, the conversation ends.
You're no longer engaging with a fellow citizen.
You are engaging with a societal pollutant. Debate is unnecessary. Containment and exclusion are the only justified solutions.
And the broader implication, the reason they dedicate massive resources to destroy one person publicly is the resulting chilling effect, isn't it?
It is the ultimate lesson plan. Watching one person get isolated, ridiculed, and professionally ruined, that social death, serves as a powerful lesson for thousands of observers.
The lesson is simple.
Don't speak. The price is too high. This makes oppressive laws unnecessary. Fear does the work of silencing dissent much more efficiently than state coercion ever could.
That fear-based compliance brings us to some of the deeper tactics, moving beyond social media and into real-world manipulation. Let's look at controlled violence and the use of provocateurs. This feels like dark territory.
It is, but it's demonstrably part of the playbook. The strategy is often summarized internally as, let it happen, then film it and control the explanation.
So they don't necessarily organize the violence directly?
Not always. The tactic is to systematically allow or subtly encourage unrest, because chaos provides the ultimate justification for pre-planned expansions of power.
How does that look when it's operationalized?
It can involve strategic inaction. Police standing down in volatile situations, security withdrawing from sensitive areas, or systematically allowing violent rhetoric to escalate online for weeks leading up to an event.
So the resulting chaos isn't accidental, it's predictable and useful.
Highly useful. Because once the incident occurs, the property damage, the conflict, the controlled media response quickly reframes the event. They control the narrative around who started it, what it represents, and most importantly, what must be done next.
And the solution was already drafted.
The solution, be it expanded surveillance or new legislation, was already written. The incident was simply the emotional justification required to push it through.
It's turning organic social messiness into a perfectly timed tool for centralized power. Let's move to the weaponization of bureaucracy. Legal warfare or lawfare.
Lawfare is the use of process as punishment. When they can't win in the court of public opinion, they weaponize the legal and regulatory systems to drain an opponent's resources, time, and mental capacity.
So we're talking about an endless stream of serial investigations, financial audits, aggressive regulatory referrals.
Precisely. The goal isn't necessarily a clean conviction. The goal is attrition. The objective is to make the opponent win the legal battle only after they have already been comprehensively ruined by the journey.
The punishment is the process itself.
Regardless of the final verdict, yes.
Moving parallel to that is economic coercion. This is how narratives are enforced without ever needing to pass a law.
This is leveraging private financial power to achieve public policy objectives. Corporations are pressured, often under the guise of managing brand risk, to enforce prevailing narratives.
So they deplatform dissenting voices, withdraw sponsorships, deny financial services.
Right. A large bank isn't saying, we agree with this political position. They're saying, this voice represents too much financial or reputational risk to our brand because of the coordinated backlash we will face if we continue serving them.
Which achieves the identical result, silence and exclusion. The financial lifeline is choked, and dissent becomes economically non-viable.
No law was passed, no constitutional right was formally violated, but the narrative is enforced just the same through economic force.
Finally, let's discuss the subtle manipulation of the collective record, memory holing and historical revision, gaslighting the public so gently they don't even notice.
If the narratives fail to stand up to scrutiny over time, history must be edited. Old statements quietly disappear from search indexes. News articles are significantly updated weeks later without any prominent notice.
Definitions of critical terms shift over time.
Yes. So what you clearly remember being true 6 months ago, maybe a specific definition of a medical term, is now subtly redefined as misinformation. And you're left wondering if you misremembered reality itself.
Context evaporates, creating pervasive self-doubt.
And if the public can't trust what they read last week, or even what they remember an official saying last year, they default to whatever the current authority claims is the truth. They trust the system over their own memory.
Which is the definition of successful gaslighting. We've laid out the entire system. Before we focus on self-defense, why does this all scale so effectively? Why doesn't it constantly expose itself?
Because it doesn't require a secret cabal of cartoon villains plotting in a bunker. It requires compliant people following simple, powerful incentives within vast organizations. The system relies on 3 things: fear of career loss, careerism driving people to support the prevailing power structure to climb the ladder, and above all, silence.
The choice not to rock the boat.
So the machinery doesn't need evil masterminds. It just needs ordinary, ambitious, compliant people worried about their mortgages.
That's what makes it so hard to fight, which is why this final section is so crucial. We need to move from exposure to actionable empowerment. How do we, the listeners, protect our own minds against this machine?
The first, and often the hardest step in the digital age, is to slow your emotional reactions. The entire system is built on your immediate reflexive engagement.
So when you feel that intense moral fervor or panic,
You must pause. Implement a mandatory cognitive cooling-off period, say 24 hours before sharing or commenting.
that pause provides the cognitive distance to perform the next critical step, which is to notice emotional spikes when consuming content.
If you feel an immediate intense spike of fear, anger, or moral superiority, recognize that spike not as truth, but as a crucial data point indicating potential manipulation.
That feeling is a signal.
It's a signal that the content is likely bypassing your logic center and going straight for your emotional core to prompt a desired action.
And once we feel that spike, we have to pull back and ask the critical question, who benefits from this narrative?
Look past the surface claims. If the narrative requires you to focus solely on hating a specific external enemy, ask who, in the background, is using that distraction to quietly consolidate power or pass unpopular legislation. Always look up, not just at the enemy being presented to you.
And finally, we have to actively fight the tribal certainty that identity warfare creates. We must separate identity from belief.
Resistance to tribal certainty is the ultimate act of self-defense. You must internally affirm that your personal worth and your core integrity do not depend on holding a specific political belief or agreeing 100% with your social group.
If you can develop the fortitude to disagree with your friends or your online community without feeling like your very being is threatened.
You become infinitely harder to control.
The ultimate goal here isn't to be universally right or to win every argument. That's impossible.
No. The ultimate personal goal is to maintain cognitive sovereignty. It is about ensuring that you remain the independent master of your own thought process, your own memory, and your own emotional state,
In a world that is systematically designed to steal those elements away.
and replace them with manufactured compliance. The darkest part of dirty politics isn't what it does to society or to institutions. It is the insidious damage it inflicts on you, the individual mind. It trains you to hate strangers you've never met, to distrust your neighbors who merely disagree with you on policy, to fear disagreement itself, and ultimately to equate dissent with danger. It builds invisible fences around your thought process,
And it makes you feel anxious and isolated.
constantly looking for a powerful structure to grant you release. Power doesn't need to control your vote if it successfully controls your perception, your emotional state, and your willingness to even utter a dissenting word. And the moment you recognize these precise mechanisms operating on your mind, you're already a crucial step harder to control. If you enjoyed this conversation and found this deep dive into the dark arts enlightening, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.